It started in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and prayers. My son, Eli, lay there motionless, his tiny chest rising and falling in sharp, mechanical rhythm under the hiss of machines. His fingers, barely the size of matchsticks, were wrapped in tape and 4-line running into one hand. His eyes were shut, too exhausted even to cry. And I was shaking, not from grief, but from the fear of what I knew I had to do. The doctors had been clear. Without the emergency procedure, we had maybe 48 hours. Maybe. And I didn't have the money. Not even half. I had called everyone, friends, his father, who ghosted us years ago, even charities, but no one could raise that kind of money that fast. Everyone except one person. My sister, Alana. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. And it wasn't one of those passive, slow fade estrangements. It was sharp, explosive, final. The kind of family falling out that ends in court documents, not awkward holiday dinners. But she was rich, married rich, inherited richer. I knew for a fact she had a family emergency fund, one her parents started before they died, sitting untouched under her name. And I knew her signature. Every loop, every lean, every angry tilt of her pen. I just never thought I'd ever use it. Before I go further, if you're watching this, and this story already has your heart pounding, please subscribe. These are real, messy, human stories. And if you've ever had to do the wrong thing for the right reason, this one is for you. Let's keep going. Alana and I had always been opposites. She was the golden one. Clean lines. Straight as. Ballet recitals. Private school. Polished. Poised. Perfect. And me, I was the younger mistake. The impulsive one. The girl with scraped knees, messy hair, and the report cards that made our mother cry. But we were close once. God, were we close? There was a time when I would sneak into her room just to lie beside her when the thunder got too loud. A time when she'd draw stars on my wrists and tell me I was magic, even if the world didn't see it yet. But grief changes people. And when our parents died, her at 26, me at 21, everything cracked open. She handled the estate. She signed the paperwork. She took control. And somehow I ended up on the outside, squinting through the glass. I won't pretend I didn't make mistakes. I spent my portion too fast. I dated a man who left me pregnant and broke. I refused to follow her advice when she offered it, always with that thin smile that felt more like judgment than concern. So she cut me off. For good. I didn't want to call her that day, at the hospital. Not because I didn't need her. I did desperately, but because I knew what she'd say. And I was right. She didn't even let me finish the sentence. I'm sorry, but no. I can't reward your irresponsibility again. Alana, this isn't about me. It's Eli. He could die. And that's devastating, she interrupted. But maybe next time you'll think twice before putting a child in the middle of your chaos. That's when I knew. She wasn't going to help. Not even for him. Not even for family. I paced the hallway for 15 minutes before I did it. There was an old file folder in the back of my closet, one I hadn't opened in years. It had a copy of the estate documents, some legal papers, and a scan of her signature. My hands shook as I traced it. The account was in her name, but I knew the routing info. I had access to a joint emergency access clause we'd once agreed on, and with the right digital form, it worked. $37,500 wired directly to the hospital. I signed as her, and it saved my son's life. For days, I didn't tell anyone. Not a soul. Not even Eli, once he started waking up again and asking for cartoons and apple juice like none of it had happened. I told myself it didn't matter, that Alana wouldn't even notice. But I forgot one thing. She always noticed everything. The email came 2 weeks later. Subject line, you crossed a line. No greeting. No warmth. Just 10 icy lines that read like they were written through gritted teeth. You forged my name. You stole from me. I'm not pressing criminal charges. For now. But you will pay this money back. And don't expect to see Eli again. I'm filing for emergency guardianship. I read the last line over and over again until the screen blurred. Emergency guardianship. She was trying to take my child. And the worst part, she might win. Alana was powerful, connected, married to a man who played golf with judges and hosted fundraisers for family court reform. And me, I was the perfect villain on paper. Single mom. History of late rent. A forgery charge one lawyer could spin into full-blown fraud. They didn't have to prove I was a bad mother. They just had to prove I was unstable and desperate, and by then I was both. Court came fast. Too fast. She wore beige, like innocence. Clean hair, quiet face, pearl earrings. I wore a second-hand blazer. And the only flats I owned that didn't squeak. Her lawyer called me reckless, a liar, a manipulator. Said I put my child in danger by relying on fraud to fund his care. He played the audio of my call to her, the one where I begged, screamed, sounded completely unhinged. They had everything. I had just me. When the judge ruled in her favor, I didn't cry. I just sat there, still, as if my body had finally run out of noise. Eli wouldn't be removed from me entirely, but Alana would have joint custody and the right to primary residence, citing financial and emotional stability. In short, I could see him, but she would raise him. That was 4 months ago. Since then, I've visited Eli every other weekend, sitting on the edge of a guest bed in a house that smells nothing like home. He doesn't understand it yet. Not fully. He just knows mommy's visits are shorter now, and Aunt Alana always has new toys. He told me once, and he says you needed a break. I almost broke right there. She's rewriting me, in his mind, in his heart. And the worst part, I gave her the tool to do it. But here's the twist no one saw coming. I wasn't the only one who crossed a line. Because Alana, she's hiding something, too. Something from our past. Something buried in the very foundation of her perfect life. And now that I've lost almost everything, I'm going to dig it up. You'd think that after losing your child in court, your spirit would just snap. Mine didn't. It cracked quietly, like ice beneath weight, spreading in thin, sharp lines no one else could see. I wasn't angry. Not at first. Just numb. I kept telling myself, you did what you had to do. You saved him. But every time I returned from one of those supervised weekend visits, my stomach burned. I'd go home, sit in the dark, and picture Eli eating dinner in her kitchen, her reading to him, her tucking him into bed, and I'd stare at the wall, asking the same question over and over. She'd laughed and said, I needed to help someone. I'll replace it. I was maybe 15. It hadn't made sense at the time, but now it did, because Alana had already forged once, and it had nothing to do with me. I went digging. First, old bank files. I had access to some paper trails through estate documents that she forgot to fully seal. Small pieces, but enough to get dates, movement, clues. Then I pulled medical records. Not mine. Not Eli's. Hers. And that's when the first thread pulled loose. A name I hadn't heard in almost 20 years. Tristan Rhodes. A boy. Her ex. But not just any ex. He was her tutor. Older. College senior when she was 17. Our parents hated him. Threatened to press charges when they found out about their relationship. Then he disappeared. Literally. Vanished. We were told he moved overseas. But my gut said otherwise. I found his obituary. Not overseas. Local. Died the same year she told Dad she needed to help someone. I kept digging. The date of death, 2 weeks before a large withdrawal from that family emergency fund. And the cause of death, overdose. Not his first. Suddenly, it all snapped into place. She didn't just help him. She paid him off. To disappear. Or to stay silent. Or maybe to keep her secret safe. I remembered their fights. Not mine, and Alana's, hers and Mom's. One night, I heard a scream. Then sobbing. Then Alana storming down the hallway, holding her stomach. At the time, I thought she was sick. Now I'm not so sure. There's a box in our parents' attic. I went back there last week. The key was still buried in the same ceramic owl in the bookshelf behind dust and forgotten years. Inside that box were journals. Alana's. She must have hidden them after Mom died. One was dated March 2003. It opened with a single line. I can't keep the baby. My fingers went cold. The entries were cryptic, emotional, full of fear. She never named Tristan, but the timing, the tone, everything lined up. And then, in the final entry, they said if I give it up, it'll be like it never happened. But I'll always know. I closed the book and sat on the floor for hours. Alana had a baby, or was pregnant, or both. And no one ever knew, not publicly, not legally, not in the court's glowing character reports. But I did. Now I did. For the first time in months, I felt something new. Not guilt, not fear, but power, because for so long she had painted me as reckless, unstable, dangerous. But she had secrets too. And if she was willing to destroy me in court, twist the story to take my child, then maybe it was time I reminded her who I used to be. Not the helpless little sister, not the financial failure, not the charity case, but the girl who sees things, who remembers, and who's done being silent. I called her the next day. She didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. Calm, steady, not threatening, just this. We need to talk. There's something I think you forgot, and I remember everything. She called back 20 minutes later. The first words out of her mouth were, "You went through the attic, didn't you?" I smiled. I found the journal. Silence. Then, clipped, sharp. "That was a lifetime ago. Don't you dare drag that into this." I didn't respond to the threat. Just said, "I don't want to fight. But if you're going to raise my son, you don't get to pretend your slate is clean while you bury mine in court filings." She hung up. No apology. No admission. But her silence said enough. Now the game has changed. She doesn't know how much I'll use. Or if I'll go public. Or file something myself. I'm not sure either. Because this isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about balance. About making her see that power isn't permanent. That the sister she tried to erase is still here, still standing, still watching. There's something terrifying about realizing your enemy is not some stranger. It's someone who knows the sound of your laugh, the scent of your childhood shampoo, the way you used to hum to fall asleep. That's what makes it sting. Alana wasn't just my sister. She was the person who knew me before the world did. And now, she was also the one trying to erase me. I didn't sleep after our last phone call. The silence on the other end of the line, after I mentioned the journal, it was louder than any threat she could have voiced. She was scared. I could feel it. And for once, I had something she didn't leverage. It wasn't just about the baby she wrote about in that journal, or Tristan's obituary, or the trust account she emptied under the radar. It was about what it all represented. Proof that Alana wasn't perfect. Proof that she, too, had chosen survival over legality. And now that I had proof, she couldn't use morality as her weapon anymore. The next time I visited Eli, she didn't come to the door. It was her husband, Max. He smiled politely, like always, the kind of smile a man wears when he's been coached to look calm, but doesn't know what he's walking into. Alana's not feeling well, he said. She asked me to handle the handoff today. That was a lie. She was hiding, but I played along. I bent down, hugged Eli, tighter than usual, then handed over the bag of snacks and drawings he'd left at my apartment. Max lingered, then said awkwardly, for what it's worth, she's been different lately. Since court. Since everything. I didn't answer, but I looked him in the eye and said, secrets don't stay buried forever. Sometimes they start digging themselves up. He blinked, swallowed, nodded, and I walked away. 3 days later, I got an email from a woman named Lydia. She used to work for Alana as a house assistant years ago before she married Max. Her message was short. I don't know if this will help, but I remember the night she came back from the clinic. She was 17. I was told to say nothing, but I never forgot. I'm sorry for what she's doing to you. Attached was a scanned receipt from a private women's health facility the same week as the final journal entry. And suddenly, everything was real, verifiable, not just emotional trauma or childhood suspicion, but evidence, the kind of thing that could ruin her carefully cultivated, family-first image, the kind of thing a judge might care about if it became relevant. I didn't go public. Not yet. I printed the receipt, highlighted the date, then I mailed it to her with a note. I don't want war. Just balance. Don't make me show them the rest. No signature. No threats. Just truth. Folded, stamped, and delivered. She called at 11:43 p.m. I didn't answer. She texted, Alana, you think this scares me? Alana, you're playing with fire. Alana, you should have stayed in your place. Then, finally, Alana, what do you want? There it was. Not anger, not denial, just fear. And control slipping. The next day, her lawyer filed a motion to suspend primary custody proceedings. Just like that, no explanation. On paper, it looked procedural, but I knew better. She was pulling back, buying time, hoping I'd stay quiet. I didn't respond. I waited. 2 days later, Max called me. Not her. Max. Can we meet? He asked. And I said yes. We met at a coffee shop halfway between their house and mine. He ordered tea. I didn't order anything. We sat. He looked at me, tired, tense, and said, She's unraveling. You know that, right? I didn't reply. He continued, I don't know what happened between you two, but she hasn't slept in weeks. She won't even let Eli stay over anymore. My chest tightened. She's punishing him. I said, Max nodded slowly, and herself, then leaned forward and said something that made my stomach drop. Did you know about the other kid? I blinked. My throat dried. He said it so plainly, so quietly, and for a second, I wasn't sure if I had heard him right. She told you? I whispered. He nodded. 6 months before we got married. She said it was from a different time. That she terminated. Said it still haunts her. I didn't press. Then he looked me dead in the eyes. But I think there's more. Something she's not telling me. Or anyone. That's when it hit me. What if there was no termination? What if the baby hadn't been lost? What if she gave birth, and someone out there was walking around, not even knowing the truth? What if that was the real secret? Everything changed after that conversation. Not because of what Max said, but because, for the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. And I wasn't just fighting for Eli anymore. I was fighting for the full truth. The next morning, I went back to our childhood town. I visited the clinic, pulled archives. There it was again, the name Tristan Rhodes, admitted to the ER with overdose complications the night after Alana's clinic visit, released into his father's custody 2 days later. Then, nothing, no trail, no social, No paper. It was like someone had pressed delete. Except one record stood out. A private adoption record logged the same month. Non-identifiable. Sealed. No names. But it aligned down to the signature of the family doctor, a name I remembered from the journals. It wasn't proof, but it was close. Too close. I drove home that night with the windows down, air sharp in my lungs. Alana wanted to break me in court. Fine. But she had underestimated one thing: what a mother will do to protect her child. I did it once, forged her signature to save my son's life. And now I would do what I had to again to protect him from her. But this time, I wasn't the one hiding. They say everyone has a version of themselves they show the world, and a version they hide. Alana's world version was flawless, a curated blend of grace and control. She wrote parenting columns, sat on school boards, hosted women's brunches with name tags and lavender cookies. But beneath the pearl earrings and tight smiles, she was rotting with secrets, and I had just dug up her worst one. After I found the sealed adoption record, I couldn't sleep. I sat up staring at my son's old baby monitor, watching shadows move on the walls, wondering if there was a child out there, someone who looked like her, maybe even like me, walking around not knowing the truth. And if so, how far would Alana go to keep that truth buried? I went to visit Max again. I hadn't planned to, but something about that conversation we had, the look in his eyes, told me he was ready to hear more. I brought the receipt from the clinic, the journal scans, the trust activity timeline. I laid it out on his kitchen table like a prosecutor in a courtroom that no one else knew existed. And then I asked, did she ever mention giving the baby up? Not terminating, but adoption? He stiffened. His fingers tapped the table. 1, 2, 3, before he spoke. No, but he paused. Her mother. Before she passed, she used to talk in her sleep. Sometimes I'd be visiting. I'd hear her whisper things. One night she said, the baby's gone, but she still cries in the bathtub. I thought it was nonsense, just grief talk. But it wasn't. It was memory. There was a private adoption attorney who used to work with our family decades ago, a man named Hal Kessler. Retired now, living upstate. I took the risk and called him. Used our mother's maiden name. He hesitated, then said, that name hasn't come up in years. And then, in a softer tone, if this is about the girl from 2003, I can't release records. But I always wondered what became of that case. It wasn't handled right. She was far too young. The line crackled. I didn't push further, but the crack was enough. Now it was real. Alana hadn't just lied to Max. She'd lied to the courts. She'd lied to child services. She'd lied in every affidavit where she listed herself as a model caregiver. Because deep beneath all that pearl polish perfection was a girl who got scared, got pregnant, and buried the evidence in a system built to keep women like her protected, as long as they played the role well enough. I sent her one last message. You have 48 hours to return custody of Eli, or I release everything. No threats, just terms. And this time, she didn't call back. 2 days later, her attorney emailed me directly. No subject line, just a PDF attachment titled Custody Modification Agreement, Voluntary. It was signed by Alana and Max, returning full custody of Eli to me. I had to reread it 4 times to believe it. There were conditions, of course, non-disclosure, sealed mediation, 0 press. But it didn't matter, because for the first time in over a year, I had my son back. We moved the same week. Not far, but far enough. New school, new neighbors, new grocery store, No more brunches or board meetings or politely fake smiles from people who only knew me through courtroom gossip. And Eli? He bounced back like kids do. He asked if he'd still see Aunt Alana, and I told him yes, because I wasn't going to poison his memory of her. She could do that on her own. The last time I saw her was in the courthouse lobby, signing the final handoff papers. She looked smaller, still dressed like she ran the room. But her eyes gave her away. For the first time, she didn't look at me with contempt. She looked at me like someone who'd been seen, really seen, and hated what she saw. "You were always willing to get dirty," she said. And I replied, "And you were always willing to pretend your hands were clean." Then I walked out, Eli waiting on the bench. We went home. Sometimes I still dream of that hospital night, the hiss of the machines, the chill in the air, the paper where I forged her name with a pen that shook in my fingers. I don't regret it. Would do it again. Not because it was legal. It wasn't. Not because it was right. It's complicated. But because I know the truth now, that Alana would have done far worse just to keep her image intact. What I did was desperate. But what she did was a performance. And in the end, the audience finally saw behind the curtain. The quiet was the first thing I noticed. After the court dates ended, after the lawyers packed up, after the mediation sealed the files, and I held the final agreement in my hands. Silence. No courtroom echoes. No voicemails from her attorney. No tense meetings with court-appointed mediators watching me like I might snap. Just quiet, and the weight of holding my son's hand as we walked out of the courthouse together for the last time. He didn't understand everything, of course. Eli was too young to know the full truth. But he understood this much. Mommy was home now, and she wasn't going anywhere. At bedtime that night, he crawled into my lap with his favorite blanket, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender and childhood, and whispered, "Did we win?" I kissed the top of his head. "We didn't win," I said gently. "We made it through." Because that's what it really was. Not a victory, a survival. The first few weeks felt like a long exhale. I went back to work. Not full-time, just enough to feel normal. I started baking again. Mornings became routine. Breakfast, backpacks, soft music in the kitchen, while the sun filled the corners of the apartment. It was a life without drama, without surveillance, without Alana, and that was its own kind of healing. Max emailed me once. No subject, no signature, just one sentence. "You were right." I didn't reply. Some truths don't need a conversation. I still wonder about the child, the one Alana gave away, the one no one but a few journals, a dusty lawyer, and I now know ever existed. Some nights I picture them, grown, walking into a bookstore, brushing their hand along the spine of a novel they don't know their mother once loved. I wonder if they have her eyes, her caution, her brilliant, suffocating need for control. I don't think I'll ever find them. And maybe that's okay. Some ghosts need to stay nameless. As for Alana, I haven't heard her voice in 6 months. Not directly, but I hear things. A friend saw her leave the PDA board. Another said she pulled out of a speaking engagement. Her name stopped showing up in the local newspaper's community pages. She's shrinking quietly, elegantly, the way people like her do when they no longer control the room. And maybe that's her version of a reckoning, not a fall, just a fade. One morning, Eli asked if he could write her a letter. He said he missed her cookies, missed the games, and I let him. Because I'm not here to write her out of his heart. I'm here to make sure he grows up knowing truth matters. That love isn't control. That family doesn't mean silence. He wrote it with green crayon, drawing hearts and spelling miss with one S. I mailed it. No return address. Just one more door I didn't need to open. I see myself more clearly now. Not the villain she made me out to be. Not the hero either. Just a woman who made a desperate choice and paid a price. A woman who lied once to save a life and then learned how to live with the weight of it. A mother, a survivor, a sister, still, even if the word doesn't mean what it used to anyone listening, maybe you've been the one judged, or the one who fought too hard. Maybe you know what it's like to feel your back against the wall and still find the strength to do what needed to be done. If that's you, this story was for you. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and painfully human, subscribe to this channel. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones no one wants to admit happened. Not fairy tales, but truths. Messy, complicated truths. The curtain's down now. The audience is gone. All that's left is me, Eli, and the quiet we earned. And I'll take it, every single second of it, over the lies that came dressed as love.